This week we're talking about the helping profession, intervention, termination, evaluation. Actually, that's not the order. It is intervention planning. No, assessment. This week we're talking about the helping profession, and this involves assessment, intervention, assessment, planning, intervention, termination, and evaluation. And I'm going to cover those steps very quickly so that you can have a review for this semester. We're talking about the plan change process, and I want you to think about the agency where you're at and how do they handle each of these steps of assessment, planning, intervention, evaluation, termination. Some people put termination before evaluation. They're kind of used interchangeably. Sometimes it's at the same time. But this is how we're going to talk about it today. And I want you to think about the agency where you're at and each step of what they provide from beginning all the way to the end. It might help you also to write down, turn off the PowerPoint here after you watch it, and then write down each of the steps that your agency uses. And if you aren't able to determine where that happens, talk to your supervisor about it. So think about where you're placed and what did they do for assessment. Assessment is, and I'm making an abridged version here, this is my quote, but this is gathered from different articles and some of the course texts that we have used over time in several different classes. But here is the way that I understand assessment as a social worker. Gathering as much information as possible within the parameters of the tools that the agency has provided, using the social work knowledge and skills with the intention of using the information to work with the client to formulate a plan of action with regard to the client's needs. So basically what you're doing is you're going to get information from the client, and you and the client are going to then make some decisions about whether the client is suitable for that agency, whether they need additional help that your agency isn't able to provide, or what your agency can provide them that you have to offer. So basically, you're assessing this client to see if your services are appropriate for the client. It begins with the very first interaction that the client has with the agency, and this could be any number of things. All clients have different ways of, and all agencies, have different ways of assessing a client's needs. Some agencies reach out to people online, and they can have an online form that they fill out, and then they get involved with the agency. But this is the first interface with the agency. And how does your agency do that? Is it online? Is it they make a phone call? Is it they're referred by someone else? Those first steps are very important because that's the interaction the client has had with the agency before they see you. And they have already made a judgment or a determination in their mind about how much or how well your agency is going to be able to help them. They've already kind of decided before they get there in their own way about whether you can help them or not. And you may need to tell them yes or no or what you have to offer them. There may be some misperceptions in that assumption that they have. So you want to make sure that they have a good understanding of that. Also, think about the first steps. Is there an in-person appointment? What tools are used for that assessment? Is it a written format, or is it something that when they come to your office, they fill out, or is it something that you fill out online, or is it you get the information and write it all out? Many times an agency will have a social worker actually do a psychosocial assessment And that's where you gather the information with a certain tool and then you record it on another tool where you're typing it out or writing it out to give someone else a view of what your assessment is. So the tool is not actually the assessment yet. The tool is what you're using to gather the information, and the assessment is the conclusions that you get from that information. And what is done then? Who is going to look at this assessment? Who's it given to at the agency? Does that psychosocial assessment then go to your supervisor? Does it go to a psychologist, psychiatrist? Does it go to another social worker? Does it go to somebody else at the agency? And what's it going to be used for? And then the determination is made, what is the next best step for the client? So let's say you've done an assessment and you've determined that your needs at that agency are appropriate. Then you have to go to a planning, okay? You're going to be planning with this client. So right after assessment, you start planning. You never plan until you assess. We never jump into, okay, here's what we're going to do. And that would be actually intervening, but that would be helping. The plan would be telling your client, okay, here's what we're going to do. And believe it or not, even if you already know what the answers are because you've given referrals a million times or you know this agency that you're going to refer to, and you go ahead and tell the client, you are still doing an assessment in your mind of whether this is appropriate for the client. So you're always assessing. It should be in a formal way, and you should be going through some skills that you've developed in assessment before you're planning, but the next step is planning. Planning is exploring the options for the client and making goals with the client that will fit how best to get the client to the end of the goal of success or meeting the agency's mission. If you're not able to meet the client's needs at the agency, then determine what agency could. Never, ever leave a client without a plan or information about what the plan is or information about the agency. Never hang up the phone and say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Hang up the phone, okay? You got to have some information to give that client. It's not fair to them for them to come to your agency and ask for assistance and then not have any response to that. Your agency may not be able to provide that assistance, but you should be able to give some response as to you will or will not and what that means. In the context of your agency, always remember that. If you have questions about what the context of your agency is and what the process is, go to your supervisor there and talk about the process in an appropriate way during your supervision time. Okay? Write down the goals and be sure you have a timeline and measure of achievement in order to ensure success. If you really want your client to be successful, you will both know what the goals are. You'll both know what's going on here. Okay? You don't go as a social worker outside and say, okay, here's the goals that I think is best for them. And I'm not going to give them any, I don't need to tell them because I think it's best and I'm just going to do it for them. Probably not the best thing. So be sure the client is aware of the goals. Now, every setting is different, though. You may work at, a probation office or something like that, and the parameters are going to be different for you. And the information that you share with clients may be different for you. There may be a different process, a different, not process because there always is planning involved, but there may be a different protocol is what I mean. So be sure you understand what the protocols of your agency are. And by now, second semester, you should understand the protocols of your agency. Be sure the client is aware of the goals. Intervention. If your agency is able to assist and provide the service that your agency offers. If not, then you need to make a referral. Remember that your level of competency is important. Is your agency able to provide what they need? And are you competent as a social worker to provide what they need? Now, when you're in undergraduate and you're at your field placement, you may not have the full confidence right now that you need. Hopefully you will by the end of the semester. But you may think, well, okay, I don't know as much as my supervisor does. So that's what supervisors are for. is to help you understand your role and the intervention strategies that you can provide. And in that way, when you're going to your supervisor, it'll increase your competency. And then always document your interventions so you can go back and evaluate them later and demonstrate that you have achieved success with this client. Termination evaluation. The termination evaluation time is when the relationship is with the client is either about to be ended or will be ended. Some places do a client satisfaction survey before the client leaves. Some do a client satisfaction survey after. That is not the only way to do an evaluation. There are also many, many ways to end a relationship with the client. Some are not good. Some are well within the parameters of social work. They're professional. You should go by what your agency and your supervisor say about how to end the client, but you also have some skills that you've learned in your practice classes about how to terminate or end relationships with clients and what the best personal, people, empathic skills are. Using empathy and warmth and compassion to terminate the relationship in a professional manner. Again, don't just hang up the phone, so to speak. So anyway, you need to know what the agency does with regard to termination and evaluation. There are lots of different ways to do that, but you as a social worker have some skills to offer in that area if you will look close at that. So that is the end of this presentation, and I hope that it's been helpful to you.